As we wait for more people arrive after lunch. Yeah, I hope everyone had a good lunch. My name is Kishor. I am an archivist from Asia from Archives Singapore. So welcome to session 5E. Today, this session we have 5 sets of presentations, but there will be a coffee break. So we look forward to that. So I just want to introduce the speaker, Dr. Donna LYON. So Dr. LYON is a producer and lecturer in Master of Producing at University of Melbourne, Faculty of Fine Arts and Music, Victoria College of the Arts, Film and Television. She is also the Deputy Associate Dean Academic at the Faculty of Fine Arts and Music. Her PhD research focused on the practice of producing using Practice Lab, action research and reflective inquiry to create a digital archive project. Process involved a large-scale digitization, preservation, and access project, whereby she both developed and realized a living digital archive for a student film school collection dating back to 1956. She's recently produced independent feature film Disclosure, is in post-production with the feature documentary and right code. The title of the presentation is Digital Stewardship, Sustainability, and Challenge of Community Sustainable Nationally Significant Film School Archive.
Okay. Thank you, T. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the session. And I'm really honoured to be presenting at SEAPAVAA. It's my first year here, and it's been absolutely incredible and a real privilege to be amongst humans that care so much about cultural heritage. It's very humbling. Thank you. So I'm presenting a paper that was co-written by Professor Robin Sloggett and myself. And Robin is an internationally recognised expert in cultural materials conservation, and she's my former PhD supervisor. So again, thank you for hosting me and Robin on behalf of the University of Melbourne. So today I'm going to be talking about a complex project to preserve the student film archive at the University of Melbourne, the Victorian College of the Arts Film and Television, and that's a department within the university. And at this point, you might be asking yourself, why bother about student films? I mean, who really cares? A lot of them aren't even shown publicly. They're made for assessment purposes. So I argue that today across Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific, that student film archives are some of the most important archives that we have, and that student film collections are important resources to aid collective and cultural memory. So our VCA Digital Archive started back in 1966. Then it was formed at the Swinburne School of Film and Television, and that was Australia's first film school. And in 1992, Swinburne amalgamated with the Victorian College of the Arts, and that was due to government restructuring with arts institutions. And then in the early 2000s, because it was struggling itself as an independent organisation to survive, it became part of the University of Melbourne. And so it is a retrospective digital archive that I'm talking about today. So that's all of the films, the graduate films that date back to 1966, but also it's a born digital pipeline, meaning that every work that is created now or in the last few years from every year level at the film school is preserved, made accessible and held in the archive with the relevant metadata. And so we have the oldest, largest and most comprehensive film school archive in Australia, and the collection is continuing to grow each year. Started off with about 1,800 films, and now there's around 2,500 films, which is pretty amazing, and it's growing every year. But of course, the question has continued from the very beginning, which is how do we even best preserve this archive ongoing? And so the key takeout for this presentation And that's a little bit, sorry, of the archive, which I hope to show you if we've got time. And so again, over 2,000 films in there. And so the key takeout for today is that for digital archives to be truly sustainable, a collective approach and framework that supports an ecology of archival practice must be implemented. We've heard it again and again with every presentation. And so digital archives will thrive best through intercultural support and collaboration. And today I'm going to share 3 key findings that help to illuminate that. And so the BCA Digital Archive started back in about 2013, 2014, and this was the time that Apple stopped making DVD drives in computers. And it was also when the American Blockbuster video store, which was ran in Australia called the Blockbuster, closed its doors. And so it was very clear that digital was fast taking over. And our film school, we had an impressive archive of films because we held the copyright to the films. And that's really unique. You don't often find that. And so we had films, 16mm, 35, Betacam, digital Betacam, HDCam, XDCam, and then backed up on pneumatic and VHS. But I was only obviously concerned about the high quality materials. But you could only access those films online at the library on DVD. And students, of course, it was becoming digital. Everything was becoming digital. They wanted to see their films online. They wanted to share their films online. And so we were kind of quickly becoming really redundant in our approach. And we needed to kind of move with the times, basically. And so we have a really impressive list of alumni, and I know that's probably difficult for you to see, but some of the people in the archive is like Robert Luketic. He went on to do like Legally Blonde. I'm just trying to think of who else you might know. John Hillcoat, The Proposition, David Michaud, Animal Kingdom, and then Tony Ayres, Maggie Miles as a producer. You know, they're really very impressive filmmakers, and the pictures and the slides today, they're all from the films in our archive. And so our research was, you know, how to best preserve, digitise and make accessible a film school archive. And I wanted to do that for teaching and learning, for research, and of course for output to the industry to maximise the engagement. And the UNESCO guidelines for the preservation of digital heritage stated back all the way in 2003 that public institutions have a responsibility to make their assets accessible for the long term to preserve cultural heritage. And it's no surprise that I've lost my page. No surprise then that, of course, researchers have found that the process of making digital archives accessible has democratised historical research. But the problem, as you see here, which is not this slide, but that's okay, is that without staff resourcing and ongoing investment, even when archives are preserved, digitised and made available, they remain vulnerable and under threat. And in the Asia Pacific region, you know, there's an increasing focus on disaster prevention, disaster preparedness and remediation, which is, you know, after an event. And these actions are focused on acute, large-scale risk. But the findings of our research and the practical obstacles that I faced in trying to develop a framework for the preservation of the BCA Digital Archive has demonstrated that the lack of professional frameworks is as great a risk. Let me just go here just to kind of look at some of those risks. So when a collection and its organisations lack a professional framework, these risks are chronic, slow and often incremental. And so for this reason, Robin and I are seeking to find out an answer to this question, which is how can we co-create new meaning to the study and usage of film school archives in Australia and Southeast Asia through the establishment of shared frameworks. And this is important because moving image archives matter, and archives allow us to engage in historical inquiry and narratives that otherwise may not have been accessible. So just a little bit more about our digital archive. You know, we are sitting in the home of the Faculty of Fine Arts and Music, and it's part of this vibrant school of dance and theatre and acting and creative arts therapies and music. We are a University of Melbourne cultural collection, and that's a formal process that basically assesses the significance of collections against social, cultural, historical, research, aesthetic significance. And so whilst never before has there been such great support for our archive, I can tell you that we are still under threat and that the long-term preservation and access of the films remains vulnerable. And it breaks my heart. And so the research took 6 years from idea to completion, and it resulted in a really innovative collaboration between a cultural materials conservationist and me as a film producer and an academic. And film production and film preservation, they sit at completely opposite ends of the production spectrum. Film production is about creating work for exhibition, and preservation is about prolonging the existence of the artefact. But like many film schools around the world, which are often practice-led institutions, our archive is without an archivist and it remains financially unsupported. So as a result, despite this innovative interdisciplinary collaboration where we've just brought these really unique skills and strengths, these emerging challenges continue to threaten the future existence of our living archive. And as a producer, the purpose for me is always to make films that connect with an audience. And so I realised really early when I was trying to get the project off the ground that the audiences and the usages of the BCA archive were multifaceted. We had students to staff, the wider university, prospective students, other institutions, historians, researchers, the industry. And I began to see how stories can be co-constructed to create new meaning. And that served as finding number 1, which is that archives tell stories. And so our story encompassed multiple narratives throughout its 6-year research period. And they included larger stories, which included tracing the history of the film school and its counterparts, and the story of film preservation in Australia and internationally. There were stories held within the films that map the career trajectories of the filmmakers and their success within Australia and the international film and television landscape, to the actors in the film, the crew working behind the scenes. And of course, there was meta stories. Let me go back. Meta stories, stories of locations, geographies, filmmaking styles, trends and themes, and they told technical, aesthetic and cultural stories of data that fed into the grand story of the BCA archive's research, its historical and social significance, and all of that, of course, offered amazing teaching, learning and research opportunities. But good stories contain a solid structure. And so they are often defined by genre or narrative convention. And so without this, the process of telling stories becomes unwieldy and it disconnects audiences from message. And archives are no different. And that leads me on to finding number 2, that digital archive projects require strong frameworks, curation, and stewardship. And so digital archive projects, we know, are very resource heavy in terms of the time, the labour, the costs, and there are many online resources available from which a digital archive project can benchmark its processes and procedures and ensure it meets best practices. And, there's still a high level of technical expertise required, along with machinery and human resources to complete the work at the higher standards. And, we needed to outsource, like the celluloid film, we outsourced to Australian Centre for the Moving Image. The first work was done by Dan Smart. The magnetic tapes were all done in-house. We had to buy machinery for that, engage volunteers in that process. And then, of course, there was the Born digital films. So it was dealing with the whole retrospective archive and how to deal with that workflow. And then dealing with, well, hang on a sec, what about all the films that are being made each year? And so every film, of course, needs metadata. It needs to be quality controlled, etc. And we needed to establish an interface and a design, work out permissions and structures and rights, etc. So it was a minefield. And many of the films in the archive didn't necessarily have a lot of in-depth metadata. But what we wanted to do was create a metadata structure that allowed us to then capture the beauty of the collection moving forward. And, you know, these elements on screen here are just some of the metadata elements that we wanted that are not necessarily in, you know, standard Dublin Core, for example. And, you know, what's interesting about that, though, is that, you know, now that we've got this metadata, it does allow people to kind of mine it, and also it starts to create these ideas for, like, say, geospatial and intercontextual relationships to evolve. But of course, all of that requires pending, you know, further funding. And also, you know, the films can, now that they're available, researchers can ask questions, and this can spark debate about, well, representation, gender disparity, diversity, whose voices are in the archive, whose aren't. The questioning is obviously essential to not only understand history, but the world we live in today. And the research supported other findings that, you know, obviously we need to have a strong framework, but we need to understand an object's context and its significance. And then further to that, what we need is digital stewardship. So we actually need people, institutions, to grow and embed the archives into their ethos in order for them to be truly sustainable. And digital stewardship came out of the environmental communities, and it's used in digital preservation to define the roles of a champion or a leader in digital. And Andrea Merrill states that it's someone who's responsible for the use of resources. It's synonymous with managing, administering, and if anything, the word implies that the responsibilities extend over time and over generations. And that is an appropriate expectation when we think about cultural resources. And whilst digital stewardship may start with individual, which was, you know, in my case, that was just me leading this project, and departmental efforts, it has to quickly merge into strategic and widespread vision and framework, supported by the institution, supported by policy, and beyond. And of course, as I've said, you know, we just don't have that. Now our metadata is starting to lack in its integrity. The functionality of the search engine needs to be overhauled. Digital requires action. We've got all these films, that's great, but you know how they're getting lost in the sea of kind of content. And so that's the kind of next you know, piece of work. But I think, you know, from there, like, our research has shown that there is no such thing as this self-sustaining hero. And so for me, you know, I felt like on reflection, I tried to save this archive. You know, and I wrote about it, that it was like, you know, this kind of hero's journey that I went on to save the archive and to bring life to the material. And actually what that did, because I was just really playing out kind of Hollywood tropes, that it propagated this very dominant narrative that exists, and at the exclusion of so many. And that's really no fault of its own. But I think, you know, now it's coming to realise that actually what we need is a collective narrative. And it's a collective narrative with a collective approach and a framework. And that's the thing that's going to move us towards a more sustainable ecology of archival practice. And that leads me to my final point, and that is through intercultural collaboration. And archives help tell greater stories about the world we live in, trace knowledge across generations. And to enable this, Robin and I are really advocating for intercultural collaboration and partnerships so that our films can become part of a larger story with greater meaning, and simply put, safety in numbers. And that's going to help collections become more sustainable. Universities are part of regional networks, and their remit is about soft diplomacy. And more than this, universities are interested in engagement with regions, and that moves conversations beyond saving an archive. It actually energises cross-cultural discourse, relationships, meaning-making through archival discourse and practice. And we know, I mean, everyone knows in this room that the assets that you've got are essential, but we also need that they know that they need to be collectively supported to be sustainable. And so we are looking to create a study of film archives in the Southeast Asian region, and we're particularly interested in student film archives, but I kind of have a feeling from being at SEAPAVAA that there is probably no student films in anybody's archive, but I'm interested to find out. And we're looking at really tracing the genesis of a film industry and ways of making across continents. And in this way, we're hoping that stories of and within our film school archives collectively can be nurtured and supported by a strong matrix of professionals, disciplined stakeholders and audiences, and that can help our collections grow and thrive for generations to come. And, you know, in summary, the case study of the BCA Digital Archive has demonstrated the ways in which digital archives not only illuminate history, but enable multiple narratives to coexist. And we have published some further findings in Archival Science, so please watch out for this. And we embedded it in narrative theory because we were really interested in this idea of like what Plantin and Connolly talk about, which is like archives as a way of understanding experience. And, you know, yet for knowledge of these experiences to be translated, we need digital stewards to champion our archives, but as I said, the advocacy must move quickly beyond the individual into policy, institutional support, and without this, the archives remain just as vulnerable as they were before being taken into care. So our proposed solution is to forge intercultural collaborations in archival practice. And, you know, really why? Because if moving image archives matter, then student film archives matter. And it's time to move from individualised narratives to collective ones. Archives as brokers of records are uniquely placed to assist society in moving us towards achieving social justice through multiple interrogations of narratives constructed around culture, identity and place. And we hope to continue this conversation. And I've got a QR code. If you want to participate, you can fill in your details and just, it's just your name and your email and your institution, and then I can send you out a survey when we have it. We're just waiting on ethics approval. And you can also have a look here at the digital archive, and there's a bit that says request access. And when I see people put their phones down, that's when I'm going to quickly, hopefully in about 2 minutes, give you a super duper quick journey into the digital archive. So, all right. People's phones are down, that's good. So just quickly, let me make that a bit bigger. So this is the kind of homepage, and we've, you know, staff and student access. We've got a whole collection that's on YouTube as well. We've got our story, the features, who the project contributors are. There's a timeline. There's all of our industry partners. And then when you would go request access, you'd fill in a little form, but then when you get it, you go to access archive. Now this is the archive. So it's, you know, quite a sort of simple design. I'm just going to quickly search for one film, which is a film called Bino. I've never known how to pronounce that actually. A little bit slow to load, but Billy Plepper is actually Gillian Armstrong's daughter, which is just an interesting little fact. And then, you know, you can play the film in the archive, and then you can add it to a collection. You've got a little bit of context about the film. You've got all your metadata. This is an example of one of the films that has really rich metadata. Not everything has this, of course. And then, you know, you can click on, like, say, Ari Wegner, and then that will take you to other films that Ari Wegner, etc. And, you know, again, it's got all the themes, the festivals, technical details, clearance details. It's got cast, it's got crew. It's got marketing material. So, you know, again, you can have a look at, like, hopefully this loads really quickly. But, you know, some of the beautiful photographs that are in the collection as well. You know, there's opportunities for students if they want, very hard to get this, but they could upload scripts, you know, all like assets that are associated with their film. So there's lots of potential, whether or not that's been fully realised. Again, you know, the speaker before me in this room talked about like education and outreach. It's a massive part of it. But without, you know, the proper support, you know, you just don't have that. I've probably got about a minute left, and that's taking way too long to load, so I'm going to just stop. But again, just quickly before I wrap up, then we come down to the videos, and that's where we've got the H.264s, the ProReses, and then the JPEGs 2000s. So, you know, we've got I just tried to create a one-size-fits-all solution of pres, access, and etc. So I'll leave it at that and welcome the next speaker. But love to kickstart the conversation. Again, I really hope you can join the conversation with us through that QR link, or just give me your email on the outside if that's okay. Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Irina and I are very happy to join you to speak about efforts to preserve and provide access to audiovisual documentation of Egypt's and our own institution's heritage. We are based at the American University in Cairo, AUC, which celebrated its 100th year anniversary in 2019. AUC is an English language university based on the American liberal arts model of higher education. It's attended by almost 7,000 Egyptian and international students. AUC's historic campus is in downtown Cairo at Tahrir Square, but the university is now mostly based at a new campus in the eastern suburbs of Cairo. The campus is home to AUC's Rare Books and Special Collections Library, or RBSCL for short. And for over 30 years, RBSCL has been documenting Egypt's past and AUC's history, and making these accessible to researchers and a global public. Our holdings include rare books like these from the 19th century, plans and drawings by the leading Egyptian architects of the 20th century, and our photograph collections are among the richest in the region, with vintage images of Egypt dating back to the 19th century, as well as portraits of celebrities like Akhtar Omar Sharif. With a conservation lab that repairs documents and books, an active exhibition program that makes loans to museums around the world, and a digitizing program to provide online access, the library has become well known for preserving and showcasing Egypt's cultural heritage. And in 2022, we were recognized for this with the UNESCO Jikji Memory of the World Prize. Now, static visual and textual materials make up the majority of the library's holdings, but in the last 2 decades, the library has made strides in addressing analog audiovisual material related to Egypt's history and that of the American University. So when I first arrived at AUC in 2001 as university archivist, I found this metal box of 16mm film reels. These were promotional films and raw footage made from the 1920s to the 1960s. We didn't know much about these, except from labels on the box and by looking at the film with a light box. We couldn't do much with the films, couldn't do anything with them. We didn't have the equipment to play them. And some showed damage. So our timing was fortunate since in 2009, AUC had its 90th anniversary celebration. And a filmmaker doing a documentary for the university was able to get some of the 1920s footage digitized by his office in the US. By showing what the early films revealed, like scenes of AUC's campus and its first faculty and students, we were able to make a case that the rest of the film should be digitized. And here I'm going to show you some footage from the first film that was digitized. So athletics were a big thing at AUC. University introduced the concept of collegiate athletics to Egypt. And the same thing with hands-on laboratory work. So AUC was a leader at that time. And you can see the students wearing their customary tarbouch as part of their student uniform. So to digitize the fuller collection of over 20 reels, we chose a vendor based in the US, Scene Savers is the name of the company. And we were able to get funding from the university for the project because the university's 2019 centennial was approaching. It was clear that these films would be important for the website, social media content, documentaries, and other uses for the anniversary. So the digitized films, some in color, Also featured views of the pyramids and other tourist sites in Egypt, views of modern Cairo, its old city, including scenes of craftsmen, transportation, and much of the cityscape that's long gone. So I'm going to show some clips here. This is from 1920s era film. And so the reason these scenes were filmed is that university sent over or had its staff take this footage to show to people who might fund the university. They knew that the people who might donate to the university's budget were people who had some sort of interest in Egypt. And there were people who wanted to see what the country was like. And so it was part of the university's fundraising strategy. But then it has later benefits for us to see how some of these craft techniques long gone, how they were done. This is some late 1930s footage of Cairo. So AUC, you probably know the 2011 revolution. AUC had a front row seat to a lot of major historical events in Egypt. But AUC's historic campus is right near the Egyptian parliament. So those scenes of soldiers and the coach, that's the King of Egypt opening parliament. These tourist scenes show a very different landscape of the touristic site environment now. Now the pyramids are surrounded by housing estates and traffic. So archive staff realized that more recent university audiovisual content was also important. And so we identified other material that was eventually sent to the vendor for cleaning, repair, and conversion. So this was the video archive of the AUC Journalism Department's television broadcasting and training program, with videos dating back to the 1980s. The collection contained over 700 Betacam videotapes. And these videos included student news broadcasts and feature stories about the university, coverage of performances and other events on campus, spotlights on student activities, even student protests. But these videos also documented events in Egypt over the last 4 decades, like the major 1992 Cairo earthquake, as well as cultural topics like AUC's publishing the works of Egyptian author and Nobel Prize winner Naguib Mahfouz. For other holdings, we looked to internal solutions. The university archives had a large collection of VHS videotapes dating back to the 1980s, with commencement ceremonies, lectures by important visitors, and student activities like folklore troupe dancing. This footage was in demand by the university's communications office to commemorate campus events, and also by AUC alumni themselves. To digitize these, our staff collaborated with other units on campus, like the university's media services unit, which provided equipment for converting the VHS tapes. We applied the same strategy with audio holdings, including a set of about 24 audio cassette tapes of oral histories recorded in the 1960s and 1970s with faculty, students, and staff at the university, some who were at the university in its earliest period. Recently, other audio cassettes were located in collections, and for digitizing those, we coordinated with AUC's music technology program. Now that audio cassette digitizing was minor compared to our most recent project. In 2012, the library acquired the complete sound archive of the Egypt branch of Voice of America Radio Network, VOA, the US government-sponsored international broadcaster. Their programming from the 1970s through 2000s in Arabic included news coverage of events in Egypt and the region, interviews with leading cultural and political individuals, and topical programs on themes like women's issues. VOA also broadcast performances of dramatic and literary works and Arab music. The collection contains almost 2,000 reel-to-reel audio tapes. And we knew that the content was valuable and it was really an important way to document Egypt and the region, but we didn't have the equipment or expertise to make that conversion. So our solution was to go external again, to find an external vendor. Funding was an issue, but we were able to, in 2021, secure a grant from the US Embassy in Egypt to support vendor digitizing of the tapes, plus the staff to digitize the recordings and permit upload to our digital library. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to Irina, who is going to cover various aspects of that project.
Hello to all. I want to say how we led this project. It was not that easy and was complicated, and we didn't know at the beginning what to do. So we started thinking how we can do it. And so we found the vendor, and we needed to plan ahead. Stakeholders, metadata, and the storage space. So you can see, and so this one is that we have to put on the contract file format, master and access. You can see it's a WAV, it's a master format, and MP3 is access format. We put for the users, we put online. It went into contract details because the vendor must have to comply with these rules and we follow standard international tradition of sound and educational archives. So this one, we ask the vendor to create technical metadata. A technical metadata, of course, is sample rate with that part time. So we created on Google Drive, Excel, and he had to put all information. You can see yellow one color, which I have to do myself, and it's the number of the reel, and in blue color you have to do it for each reel, and the sound quality, what is inside, music or interviews, and of course like the sample rate with that and everything. In this you can see metadata structural. And of course, it didn't come to the shape at the beginning. It was developed. Right? At the beginning, we didn't know how I put, for example, I was in charge of it, and I put real and then hyphen in number. And then after I had to give for metadata specialist and research assistant to do metadata, I realized it's clashed and you have the same number in the system because we have like it was the Voice of America 1 collection and the 5 sub collection, and they had this similar name. So I had to restructure all this, and we had a program which is called I cannot give right name now, and we got from British Library the advisors used to one software. We could rename a file name very quickly. You just drop in files and rename automatically. This is structure we can see because the good structure is important. It's for the researchers, for us first, and especially for us and for researchers to find. So you can see it's a possible batch with the sent for digitization 8 times. So you can see the batch and then a subfolder and then some another subfolder and then the audio. And this is extremely efficient and the correct way to do that. Next metadata descriptive. If we use in Google Drive, and so you can see it was the title Arabic English, creator, description Arabic and English, and then the subject keyboarding, and then it's the type, what it is, interview, report, speech, or radio program. And we actually had difficulty with this metadata. I mean, it was very straightforward to do, but then we realized we have to extract information. The purpose of audiovisual material not to describe everything, but take only important information and describe so the user could find it. And again, we needed to put information in the right way. So we use the subjects from Library of Congress. And And this is the descriptive metadata event online with using content DM. So it will open page like 100 or 200. You select how many items you want in the page. And then you next one, click, and then with an item level, you can see, of course, we don't have a picture. I have put it was recording of this Yusuf Idris, and that is how it is. And content DM, so you can see title, creator, exactly from Excel. What you see in Google Drive, exactly what you see here. Of course, so this is the information. The next step is how we are going to preserve. And we use the two copies. Actually, we have now three copies. The first one was on server. Another was on network drive, which is 80 terabyte storage located with the IT department. And another goes into cloud. A cloud goes through the Libnova platform. Libnova is like Preservica. They're working in the same way. And we had a very good arrangement with the Libnova. So we using the kind of Libnova had three options. We use the first one because we at the beginner stage. So we put information into Libnova when we can see it goes through the ingest process and analyzing files, digital information, and then it toxicity checks them and gives information and stores hot and cold. So before doing that, before doing Libnova, there's a lot of preparation because you have to create and put on green one. You can see on green one color. It's nodes of not a container. Because in like Libnova or any other storage, you cannot put huge amount of material into one folder. You have to be split several folders if you want to do in the future access files, milk files, or put to the public. So this is the case. That's the explanation. And of course, I have to say it's an ongoing process. After once we finish, we're going to analyze it, make an evaluation, put like a draft. If we digitize, so we have 2,200 Voice of American reels, and we digitize 1,700, which is a very good success. We use mostly interviews. We have the songs, but song is not under copyright, it's very older, but don't have copyright anymore attachment. And so it's an ongoing process, and I have to say it's very successful, and we are accomplished a lot.
Thank you very much.
Third presenter, during the presentation, you?
Yeah.
But because after the video, I think we have some time, question and answer. So maybe in the meantime, I'll just introduce the presenters this session. Dr. Kishor Chandra, he's presently Chief Librarian and Head of Library Documentation and Information Science Division at the Indian Statistical Kolkata. And his colleague Keya studied museology from University of Kolkata. She has worked with the Directorate of Archaeology and Museums and presently associates with Statistical. We'll play the presentation now.
Good afternoon everyone. Greetings from India. Today I will be discussing about preserving and ensuring accessibility of audiovisual collection of archives to community for sustainability. The paper has jointly prepared by myself, Keya, former intern of PC Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives, and Dr. Kishor Chandra SATPATHY, in charge of PC Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives. Today, I am presenting from Kolkata, which is not only known as the City of Joy but is also the cultural capital of India. The city is known as the birthplace of modern Indian literature and Indian nationalism. Culture of Kolkata is largely reflected in its different art forms and has a diverse cultural heritage that is abundantly rich. Kolkata is also the birthplace of many eminent personalities who have contributed in India from the ages in various spheres of life, which have been of great importance to the society and culture of India. Professor Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis is one of the pioneering scientists and also known as the father of Indian statistics. In my presentation, I will be focusing on the journey of ISI, life of Professor Mahalanobis, establishment of PC Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives, its audiovisual collection, preservation and dissemination, and issues and challenges. PC Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives, maintaining the records of the past and outstanding contribution of the contemporary period, mainly official and personal documents of Professor Mahalanobis, a scientist and organizer whose original thinking and pioneering efforts set a path for national development through the application of statistical science in various sectors. Such efforts contributed to the development of India's official statistical system, which established the value of statistical science in India and put it on the global statistical map. Professor Mahalanobis shaped the ISI as beacon of knowledge with commitment for national development and social welfare. The museum and archives also hold priceless historical records documenting the establishment and development of the Indian Statistical Institute, which opened up new possibilities for statistical science, research, and training in India. ISI was established on 17 December 1931 by Professor Mahalanobis. It was started in small laboratory in Presidency College with an annual budget of 250 rupees. Today, it has grown as big international institute with the annual budget of 250 crores. Now it has spread across 10 cities in the country with 8 scientific divisions and 3 associate institutions. In 1953, India's first indigenous computer was designed by ISI. ISI also hosted the first 2 digital computers in Southeast Asia. Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis was a great believer in interdisciplinary research because he thought that this will promote the development of not only statistics but also the other natural and social sciences. Here are some facts from Professor Mahalanobis' life. He was born on 29 June 1893. He obtained the Bachelor of Science degree with honors in physics from Presidency College in 1912. He did his tripos in mathematics and natural science from King's College in 1914. After returning from Cambridge, he joined Presidency College as a professor of physics. Professor Mahalanobis set up the Statistical Laboratory in the Bekal Laboratory of Presidency College, Calcutta, in early 20s. At the early phase, he started his statistical research in biometric studies, anthropometry, meteorology, rainfalls, and in problems of flood control in North Bengal and Orissa. Professor Mahalanobis introduced the first Indian statistical journal, Sankha, in 1933. He was instrumental in setting up the National Sample Survey, Central Statistical Organization, and introducing Statistical Quality Control System in India. Professor Mahalanobis contributed in a big way to economic planning of India. He was the main architect of India's second five-year plan. In 1958, he developed fractile graphical analysis. Professor Mahalanobis worked for international understanding and collaboration in scientific research with eminent scientists of different countries. Professor Mahalanobis had a plan to set up a permanent museum on the history and activities of the ISI and the growth of the ISI and statistical science in India. During the early 1950s, Professor Mahalanobis initiated a new section in the Institute Library as museum, where they stored eminent visitors' letters, reports, photographs, etc. On the eve of the birth centenary of Professor Mahalanobis in 1993, P.C. Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives was established in the dedication of his memory to commemorate the life and work of P.C. Mahalanobis. Its major objective is collection, preservation, restoration, display, and documentation. The another objective is enhance access to the material and raise public awareness of the scientific accomplishment, literary pursuits, and human values upheld by P.C. Mahalanobis, as well as the operation of the institutes he founded. The museum and archive provide a clear history of how statistics developed in the Indian subcontinent over the course of about 50 years. They particularly highlight Professor Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis' significant contribution to this field. The main collection of museum and archives are manuscripts, audiovisual materials, microfilms, slides, photographs, maps, paintings, and artifacts. Here are some glimpses of our archival collection, like books, manuscripts, and photographs. It contains several national figures like Jawaharlal Nehru, Gulzarlal Nanda, etc. The museum and archive possesses more than 4,000 photographs and 1,500 slides. These are the artifacts which are displayed in our museum gallery. Here are some more artifacts and photographs. The archive has a collection of documents and files related to ISI and Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis. Now I will focus on the different audiovisual collection of museum and archives, like audio cassettes, audio spool, video spools, microfilm, slides, and photographs. A large volume of statistical history created in last few decades is stored in audiovisual form with various collections. From 1937 to 1967, about 600 leading scientists and economists of the world came to the institute, including R.A. Fisher, Dr. Ho Chi Minh, Oscar Lange, J.B.S. Holden, Joliet Curie, Zhou Enlai, Indira Gandhi, and many more dignitaries. Their visits and speeches are recorded as audiovisual materials in our archives. There are more collections related to the statistical quality control, multivariate analysis, and the growth of the statistical science in India. Besides this collection, Museum and Archives possess the poetry recitation by the great poet Rabindranath Tagore, old songs by Dinendranath Tagore and other famous artists, etc. Museum and Archives preserved and presents audio-video recordings to provide open access to the cultural heritage as present in these recordings. Let us come to the next point. Due to non-availability of infrastructure, we send the audiovisual materials to the authentic laboratory for digitization and preservation. To preserve the audiovisual materials, identification is very important. Whether it requires cleaning or repair has to be decided first. Cleaning procedures of different audiovisual materials are different from each other. Generally, cleaning may be done with special cloths, long swabs, and sometimes a solution is used for cleaning the tap. There are different audio records with different sizes and speeds. After cleaning the tape, the audiovisual materials are put in the conversion machine. It's a long-term procedure. The machine can work 6 hours at a time. After digitizing, it needs to edit to remove background noise. For the video spool, after converting it, it needs proper editing. If there is any distortion or loss of data, that can be filled up by the editing of digitized materials. Digitized audiovisual raw materials are primarily stored in AV format, but it takes a large volume of space. Digitized audio files are saved in MP3 format and video files are saved in MP4 formats to make it easily accessible to the user. Proper storage and appropriate storage environment and handling are the most cost-effective and efficient preservation strategies for preserving physical artifacts. PC Mahalanobis Memorial Museum and Archives has started digitization of audiovisual materials after 2006. Until now, 89 records, 101 cassettes and 93 spools are digitized. By digitizing and restoring content, a wide range of people may easily access it and secure its preservation for the future generation. When we preserve the digitized audiovisual and the original audiovisual material, we have to care about the humidity, temperature and air circulation, which are very important for the storage of audiovisual materials. Temperature and humidity in storage should not be fluctuated and be within the range of the 55 to 70 degrees of Fahrenheit and 30 to 55% of relative humidity. And we store the digitized data in CVD and DVD format. While we are preserving and digitizing the audiovisual materials, we face lots of issues and challenges. And there are different types of medium. The major challenge is with better understanding the fragility of the medium. So, and another issue is damage or loss of materials. The use of traditional audio equipments that causes damage to the medium may cause loss from use, breakage, or chemical breakdown in surviving original media, which can be rare or unique. A highly unique aspects of our cultural legacy is represented by audiovisual resources. This is important for media whose content must be read on a machine in order to be played on a certain instrument. The risk develops as the media grows older and the machines that once made them stop being produced. So the non-availability of the specific instruments playable are also another challenge for digitizing and preserving the audiovisual materials. Proper storage, lack of longevity of storage media. Due to the rapid advancement of technology, many media quickly become outdated. After digitizing, the audiovisual materials are stored in CD-DVD format, but the quality and longevity of early formats are frequently lower than those produced when the technology is well established, since manufacturers are competing to acquire an advantage in the market and are not focused on the preservation of materials. While the options for accessing and storing AV data are likely to change and become more complicated, the need to address the high risk of older AV formats necessitates thorough research to enable effective handle these at-risk formats. Sometimes preserving and accessing of audiovisual materials faces challenges due to the absence of proper in-house infrastructure, lack of institutional policy and proper funding, etc. And the another issues are the lack of awareness. Due to lack of awareness, proper handling audiovisual materials may loss of content. Proper handling and physical storing are also important to preserve this cultural heritage. The archivists also played a major role in digitizing and preserving and disseminating the audiovisual materials like sound recordings and film footage in order to make them available for the present researchers as well as for using them with care and for their subsequent utilization in future. In our archives, we maintain the international professional standards for cataloging the audiovisual materials, and the work is executed by the professional staff under the guidance of archivists. Professor Mahalanobis' life and legacy with a source of history of science and the archives became powerful influence in fostering a people's understanding of it and create a sense of national identity. Archivists transfer information through the archival materials along with other communication resources to sustain the memory from generation to generation. The collection of museum and archives contains evidence of more than 50 years of history of statistical science in India is a priceless national heritage that must be preserved and made accessible to the community. Archives as a custodian of audiovisual materials, ensuring they are accessible and understandable to the community, and preserving them so that their information content and originality remain intact. The archive will conserve and provide access to them for the benefit of all the members of the community for sustainable cultural development. Thank you everyone for listening. Me and my co-author, Dr. Kishor Chandra SATPATHY, are really grateful and thankful to the organizer for giving us the opportunity to represent the paper. We would have loved to present physically, but due to some practical issues, we could not be present over there. However, we will try to present in next SEAPAVAA conference in next year. We are very much interested for international collaboration in museum and archive field. You are most welcome to contact with us. For any further details, kindly visit our museum and archives website. Thank you.
You, everyone, stay behind. I think our speaker has come online, so we can begin the question and answer. Maybe I can invite on Stephen to maybe take it up front. Are you able to hear us, Keya and Dr. Kishor?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, it's really fascinating. We have three very different institutions with very interesting collections. Really important, I think. Institutional memory. Really important. So before we open the floor, the questions I have a question for perhaps all three of you. Or elaborate on them, especially the retrospective component, going back to inventorying the physical materials, to digitizing them, and for Donna's case, receiving more materials, that perhaps you could share a little bit more about these challenges, and in particular for Donna, like maybe you could also mention, you mentioned just now that the archives is without financial support. But what would you like to achieve with? So we can start with Donna.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm not sure with the first part of your question, in terms of in order to get the project off the ground, obviously we needed to raise money. And I guess because I came into it as a filmmaker, to me, what it signalled was that it was like making a film. You had to raise money, basically. And in order to raise money, you have to know why you're telling the story. And that was the story of the archive. And so part of it was about being convinced for myself about what was the value of the archive. And so we did this in piecemeal. We got a significance assessment. So somebody might just mute them, sorry. The significance assessment was a really small portion of money that enabled us to get somebody to come in and objectively assess the archive. And then that helped to build a stronger narrative around why it was important. Then we did a preservation needs assessment. So we got money for that. Pretty much told us we need to preserve it. I don't know if that was necessary, but it was still an interesting part of the story. And then we raised money for 50, because it was our 50th anniversary. And so we raised money for 50 films in the archive to be digitised and preserved and made accessible on YouTube. And we contextualised that collection. And then we raised money for from the Screen Funding Agency to digitise the celluloid film. And then I got a really large grant from the university to raise money for the magnetic film collection. And that's when I had to just basically employ like volunteers and get software to do it in-house. But then that money also went into the building of the digital site. So then that leads me into your second part, which is what do we need now? Well, I think we just need a complete overhaul of the system. And so again, what's that, $50,000, $100,000? You know, obviously there's a lot of in-kind labour that gets part of that, but then that's the bit that it just needs upkeep. And so it's now about digital upkeep because this stuff is preserved. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, if I could just echo that, it sounds like a very similar experience to ours in that, okay, we have this cache of material. Let's look at the larger context, though, of the university. What's happening? We've got anniversaries going on. We've got potential for securing funding from the university for an important anniversary. Yeah. Who are potential partners? That's another important aspect of it. So maybe we don't have the piece of equipment we need, but another unit on campus does. So there's a lot of networking there. So Irina, maybe you can say something about the VOA grant from the U.S. Embassy. But before I pass it on to you, for example, one thing we did was to coordinate with the head of the music technology program at AUC to see what kind of equipment they had to help us deal with some of our digitizing needs.
I would like to add, if you want to write the money, you have to put it to state the value of how it rises the value of the organization. If you say this is my role as an activist, I have to do that because it's up to standard, well, it will be important, but not that important. But if you say, I want to increase the value, and then you will get money. And for example, like for Lignova, of course we didn't get grants, it came from the department, but the value was to preserving the American university records. Then it belongs to the library. It belongs to the whole university. And if we're preserving that, we're preserving the history. So we're giving educational material to the present and to the future public users. That was the important part. And also you need to put into the negative side, why you would, if you don't have money, what is going to happen? Sort of terrifying a little bit. And that really also will help you.
And it was just really important to be out there on the lookout for opportunities. So for example, the Voice of America project was funded by a U.S. Embassy grant that was related to public diplomacy and relations between Egypt and the United States. So, you know, Voice of America was the perfect project for that kind of program. Exactly. And then it's also just getting people on campus interested in it. You know, for the digitized historical films, one thing we did with events for the Centennial and just other campus events, we built a replica pianola. This was a sort of a box on stilts sort of thing. And you'd have this back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s in Egypt. You'd have a man on the street with this box, and it basically was like was a film player of its time. You'd rotate the crank, put a curtain over your head, stick your head in the box, and you watch. You pay your a few piastres and see a movie. It was before the time of the widespread availability of cinemas. So we built a replica of that. We put a laptop in there, and then we played the black and white 1920s films. And students, still do this. Students love going there. The president of the university, head under the curtain, take a look at these students with the tarbooshes and the old time athletics. It gets people enthusiastic and interested.
Then my question to Keya would be, I know you talk about the challenges, the issues and challenges. The issues and challenges of the obsolescence and problem with certain standards. Just wondering whether is the institute looking into ways to kind of resolve those issues, and is it because there is somehow a lack of support, or how would you looking to resolve some of the challenges?
Can you please repeat the question?
In your presentation, you spoke about some of the issues and challenges the institute face.
Yes.
In terms of tech obsolescence, formats, as well as standards. And you hope that you can try and improve things. So I'm just wondering whether you can share a little bit more on how the institute plans to say, is it because of a lack of support, financial support, or is it more of need to maybe refer to more study of standards and so on?
Yes, we are struggling with these issues actually. Actually, there are for this actually mainly for the digital storage. So when we are digitizing this, our main issue is the maintenance problem is also that, and due to some and when we are saving it in CD and DVD format, so for the transporting for futuristic formats, there is there is many issues because when we got in an AV format, then we converted in MP3, MP4, and we stored it in CD and DVD. And for the futuristic use, so we don't use it regularly, so there may be a loss of data. So we are always struggling with these issues actually.
Thank you. I think
Yeah.
now we will start.
Can I add on something?
Sure. Yes, please.
Yeah. In fact, when we started, storing it, and now the technology is changing very fast. So we are finding it difficult, even if right now in the museum and archive of the computers that we had to where we can play these DVDs and CDs, those machines have been replaced right now. We don't have a DVD machine player right now in the. Therefore, what we are thinking in terms of longer terms to it is already in the digitized format, so that we are planning to have a server and put it into the drive in the space, so that these issues are resolved for the time to come. So therefore, now we are shifting everything from physical storage unit to cloud format. So, and the process is going on in the museum and archive.
But maybe at this point, thanks for sharing on the difficulties with digital storage. Maybe at this point, I would like to open up if anyone has any questions for any of our speakers.
Thank you for those lovely and enlightening presentations. My question is to Donna, and firstly, I would like to congratulate you for the fantastic work that you've undertaken, and I really appreciate your efforts. And I also would like to say that I represent Northeast India Archive, and us as a film school combined, and we do have student films, and we're making small strides in saving students' work and putting it out there. I think your whatever project that you've done, is it an open access that anybody can access it?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. There's two components to it. There's a public-facing collection, which is curated, and that's on YouTube. But in good faith, we sought, even though we held the copyright, we still sought permission from the filmmakers. Then, because we tried to do, I tried to do a lot of different things. I wanted to have the retrospective archive and then the Born digital collection. And because it was student work, in the end, it felt that actually it was better that it was password protected, because there's a level of vulnerability within that type of filmmaking. And yeah, so that might help you with your, perhaps your own archive. I think there's different levels. So you can easily request access and you can get access to the archive, no problems. No, it's just a form you fill in, but people need to do that. Yeah, so.
So that brings me to part of the question, and it's to you, to others, and maybe anybody in the house is, have you thought about sustainable financial models and community inclusive models for your projects? And if anyone has thought, what does it look like? If any references?
I'll pass on in a second, but we didn't simply because of the nature of the collection. I think we have to be a little careful around what we're asking the community to put in. Particularly for student films, that we don't want to be seen to be monetizing that collection. And again, that was really important to me, the language that we used. So I think there's different ways you could look at that, and particularly because, you know, it is around still support and advocacy. But I think there's also a part of me that is just a little, would need to be convinced that we could ask the community for money in an educational context. But yeah, it's a really good question, and I think I'd have to extend my thinking further. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about potential future projects where we might collect, for example, family films from a community within Egypt. For example, Armenians have a very active community in Egypt, and perhaps if we were to collect those kind of audiovisual archives, we could reach out for support for the digitizing, for work with preservation. You know, a lot of what we get along the lines of what you have are student projects, some student films for classes, mostly student audio documentaries. And so we're fortunate to be able to intake that kind of material that way. But that's basically supported by the university's support for those students.
And to all three, Rajni here, I'm also from the same institution in the Northeast India Archive. We deal a lot with students' films basically. So I would like to know, like, current case, and you know, from the past material, we are not sure about the records, like the copyright and all that, but do you have a standard policy for the current students who are making films or, you know, creating artwork or whatever the collection may be? Do you have a standard policy for that?
Yeah, the policy is that we own the copyright, straight up. And at the moment, there's been a slight change where the students can get back the copyright at the end of their year or graduation, but we still can license the film for the archive and educational purposes. So yeah, and I think just on that I will say that the copyright bit has been contentious in the history of the film school, some students have hated that the University of Melbourne owned the copyright. But I will say that this project would never ever have happened if we didn't own the copyright. And then I get filmmakers that went to the film school, 20 years later, emailing me randomly, because my name's on the website, oh, I really want to get a copy of my film to show my son. I really want this because of that. Now, if that person had have taken their film and they would have put it under their bed or in there, or they lost it, and nothing ever would have happened. So there's absolute benefits to having copyright and being really hard about that line. And then it becomes a question of licensing and usage, because again, copyright, and I think Bronwyn was talking about it this morning from the National Film Sound Archive. Here she talks about copyright as monetization. But then one could argue that monetization is direct, meaning financial monetization, or indirect. And so what's the indirect cultural monetization or value that we're getting from having the copyright? But so I guess it's opening up our thinking in terms of not seeing copyright as restrictive, seeing it as something that serves the legacy of filmmaking practice or audiovisual collections. So hopefully that helps, but very happy to discuss further.
Just that most of what we were speaking about, AUC possesses, create the material, so the rights are not really an issue. The interesting case, I think, is the Voice of America, in that as a government, U.S. government document, U.S. government product, it's open copyright, and that's why we were able to put that out there in our digital library. The exception might be some more recent musical recordings, but as Rena mentioned, there were older ones out of copyright.
If we don't have, for example, have copyright, not copyright really for form, for academic paper, right? I want to give you one example. When students submit academic paper, like graduate thesis, they can put a clause that during 3 or 5 years, this material will not be displayed online. But after when it expires, it automatically comes online. But again, it's about all about money, using for their own progress, their career, especially when material is scientific or kind of like has specific facts. Students like to have it, which helps definitely help for them to have power of it. I feel if you give more power to the people, it actually comes back more to you because they want to share. And if you tell them, no, you have to share, then it creates sort of resentment. If you give, okay, I give you this, and then they say like, okay, I'm happy to give you right now, or maybe after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And this is much better. It gives them control, it gives our funds to put online automatically.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi. This is actually in response to Donna's initial comment right at the start, where you asked if there were any archives here that kept difficult than the Asian Film Archive does. But what's interesting is that we're probably quite a minority in the region that keeps certain works, partly because we are not a national archive. So the Asian Film Archive, we're transnational, right? So our mandate is slightly different from a national film archive. And so that could explain that. But I have spoken to many in the region, including academics and Muslims and film scholars and students, film lecturers, who are more than eager to work with archives to create the film archives for student films. And one way that we've done this in Singapore is to actually work with our film commission, who is actually supporting student films. So what we've done is that we've told them that since it's using public money, could we get the film to be deposited with the archive for preservation, and only then do they release the final trench of that grant to the student. Right. So
sort of gives us some sort of content, and we ensure that it happens. But I have to say that many film schools are very reluctant to hold on to the copyright. So you're very unusual already, and students, and I have to say that it has been difficult working with students, and obviously some of them don't go on to become filmmakers. So they make that one film and you lose them completely thereafter. So I don't know how, I think that might be a good point.
I'll just say that I think it's that students don't understand the value of the work they're creating. And it's just, I think it's just an age thing. And because I didn't care about history or anything, I talked a lot about that as I was developing the project, because as I was doing the project, I began to reflect on the films that I made when I was 18. And I hunted out my VHS tapes and I had a look at them. And I was like, oh my God, I'm literally working on this stuff emotionally and mentally, and I was making it at that time, right? And I bring this stuff in a box from house to house, migrating it, but not caring about it. And so I think, again, as we grow older, we become more reflective. And so I think that's partly education, that we can hopefully help them. But I think sometimes it's also about being really stringent and being really like, this is what we're doing. You won't see the value of this, but hopefully over time, you'll come back and a bit like a kind of parent, maybe say, I told you so, because as I said, people come out of the woodworks and that's when they want to come and find the films. So again, I don't think it matters necessarily because it's like they make one film. That one film speaks to their identity, and is an incredible time capsule of their life, the life around them, who they were at a particular time. And so I think that's something that we have an obligation. But again, I think also too that similar to what you were saying, Irina, it's also about, it's a conversation. It's hopefully, it's active, it's dynamic, it's ongoing, it's consent. Maybe it's opt-in, opt-out. Maybe we need to be a little dictatorial about our consent. It's not the right word, but dogmatic about our consent or something. I'm not sure. So it's a bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah. For one of the collections mentioned, it was the television training program at AUC, and a lot of Egypt's most famous television journalists went through that program. And so it's not a collection that we're ready to put online right now, because a lot of these journalists, they're in their training 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and maybe they were a bit awkward, maybe they're not presenting in the way that they want to have reflected on their current day image. And so that is a bit of a challenge.
But that's where the password at tiered layers can be helpful. Right. Yeah. And just sorry, because I obviously get excited about it, but there's a really good filmmaker that's in Hollywood now, right? Now his student film is terrible, right? Terrible. And anyway, I ended up putting it on YouTube. And that was the one film I didn't get permission because, he's in Hollywood. I couldn't reach the guy. And of course, I get an email one day from the agent. Can you take this down? Yeah. Oh, so sorry. Had a volunteer do that, You're terribly sorry. We'll take that down. No worries. And but anyway, it's in the collection now, still password protected. But why that film is interesting is because that filmmaker is now in Hollywood, excellent. And student filmmakers think that the films that they make at film school have to be the greatest thing. They're not usually. And it takes time and perseverance and practice to be excellent. And so I think it's a great film, and it's disappointing that the agent and perhaps the filmmaker, maybe he didn't even know, wouldn't let it be on YouTube. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. The fact is, at least it's available for a teaching and learning moment. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Dani Sugiarto from National Archive of the Republic of Indonesia. I'm the head of Archives Repository in Preservation Unit. So have responsibility in managing of preventive preservation and also curative, that archives should be available to serve in a reading room in another unit. So because I have responsibility in repository, so the archives must be arranged, must be preserved, and access to public through to the reading room. And for the archives that manage both in physical and also in digital format. So I will starting for the challenge that we have many background in the challenge of audiovisual format that we manage in repositories, because the first challenge is Indonesia. We have naturally in as a tropical climates, yeah, tropical countries that we largely in hot and humidity, so the temperature is high. Like here also is the same challenge, and also the humidity also the challenge, because with the different condition, different environment in the outside and inside of the rooms. So we have a largely cost of the preservation, for the electricity, for the equipment that we must standardize for temperature and humidity in the room, so the archives can be preserved. And also for the physical deterioration and the decay of archives. So the format we have the risk of damage, and sometimes the damage very bad. Yeah, maybe the format of like film cellulose acetate, or maybe the format of polyester. The damage, some part of damage is like a vinegar syndrome, some part is about the tension, some part about the physical deterioration, and this our problem. It cannot be what we call irreparable. We cannot repair upon this, because yeah, it's ready to waste. Yeah, we cannot open anything because yeah, very bad. And also for the various format of archives, the most of format is in paper format and also in photograph, but in audiovisual we have magnetic tape, in video, also in film, in digital format. But we have some problem in how the standardize of in digital format, that also in previous session, because the standard must be as a policy. It's related to the digital storage that must be prepared. What standard that we choose? Yeah, the digital storage that we choose also in permanent storage, in NAS temporary format, or in both storage, and maybe in the past session they have information about LTO. So that's our policy, and that's our the National Archive we have. We choose for the warm storage that we have a permanent storage, but it's just starting in 2017. Before that, we have policy to making a format in DVD format, so the quality is very low. And some part of the archives we do it for re-digitalization, rescanning, and yeah, that's our problem. And also for the challenge is in format of being obsolete, that we have many format of magnetic tape, like pneumatic, like 2-inch tape that we don't have, or the limitation of equipment that we difficult to transfer it to the digital. likes to Umatic format. We just have we have 3 players, but just one that ready to play. And some part having problem that we must like a cannibal. That some part we just have to install to another, so one player can be run. That's our problem, and sometimes we list from another company to making it playing again, so we can to transfer to digital. And also for the limitation of spare part production, so we have problem to transfer from magnetic tape. Also for the obsolescence format in film machine, yeah, we have one scanner that also have problem. Just in the early of this year, the scanner have broken, and it can function just for running for preview, but cannot capture to the digital. And also the high demand of the access through the reading room. So because the problem in player and the VCR, also for the problem of the list of archives or the archives that since of the transfer from creating agency or the provenance, they don't give the complete metadata. So sometimes the film don't have the title, don't have the description, don't have the metadata. That's our problem, that if we prepare it to be accessed to public, they cannot make a complete searching for maybe for research or anything. And also for the knowledge of archival material, that it should be make a capacity building, some training or workshop that will be improve the resource to know the knowledge. And for the next, this our collection. The most is in paper and in photographs, very big collection. But in physical, we have film very much, but we still have the measure of the film is still in the sum of reels, not the sum of title. Yeah, the reels is 59,000 and more. Yeah. And if we simplify with the title, maybe it's more reduced, but it's maybe as the imagination that we have at least 59,000 in 4th floor of our building in audiovisual building, that we have 9 floor of our building, and just 4 floor just for the film archives. So the most fully with the film of film archives. And also we have the video cassette, tape magnetic with various type of format, but the most collection from Umatic, and also from 1 and 2 inch. 2 inch in the most 2 inch video that we don't have also player in Indonesia. 2017 and 2018 we have a project to digitize in some company in Singapore, but just 2 years, and that's not continue after until now. And this is the collection depends of the organization and government. We determine for there are creating agency or provenance that as the creator. Some companies also transfer to national archives, organization, political organization, and also from the private and personal. Sorry, this is the video, but still Indonesia. I will skip. This is our project for identification and make a risk assessment, because audiovisual also as the storage for microfilm, also we make some of checking our exercise to microfilm and micrographic. Microfilm, micro some micrographic archives to determine the containers of thiosulfates, chemical content in the microfilm. So that's to know the processing in the darkroom when processing of microfilm. And also for the acidity test, we make identification of the acidity using the level of acidity with ABC. We make the level. So the level of C as the bed of acidity level, and we make a separate room for that the bed film. And also for the film acidity test related to vinegar syndrome, we make some criteria for the factor that cause the damage of archives that affected to vinegar syndrome. And also the project in 2017, when we have a digitization project of video 2-inch that we check before it's prepared to digitization. Next. This is also for improvisation about archives management that we make activity for capacity building. So the knowledge of archives material as our target, that the human resource in ANRI, we make activity to develop the individual and team abilities of archivists in building awareness about audiovisual archives. And also for the knowledge of archives include handling, storage, and identification of level of damage, and also preparation of archives before the archives putting to the storage. And also for the knowledge of archives include the preparation process before digitization process, and also knowledge in digital storage, because in ANRI we have different approach. Digitization based on what archives that having obsolescence and before it's almost damaged. So that's the priority that we make priority to prepare to digitization. And also we have a preventive about the disaster, because Indonesia we have very high risk in disaster. We make some program in Jakarta and also in province that we make disaster preparedness. That's not just audiovisual but also the all media of archives in paper-based or in audiovisual. So we make some program in other province to make disaster preparedness, because this is in natural disaster in Indonesia we often tsunami, earthquake, and anything, and also in Indonesia also often in fire accidents, anything that this very high risk. So in all in national program we make identify what's the potential disaster in all around Indonesia, in what province they have what's disaster. In Aceh they have a disaster, tsunami and a big earthquake. Also in the line of Sumatra and also in Javanese we have disaster risk of Krakatau, and also in the east area of Indonesia we have risk also about the volcanoes and the earthquake. So that's our identification. There's the symbol identification, but we have the national program to prepare through preparedness of disaster. And also we prepare how the program of management on pest, integrated pest management on archives, because the most archives is in paper and photograph, that the high risk in pest. But in audiovisual, we have also the fungicida because we spray some liquid to spray for the fungus that in the wall and also in the floor that we spray and swipe for that fungus and we clean it. That's because our problem as the cause of the high humidity and also for the high temperature. The fungus of always in the wall. That's every in the end of the month we always have this program of fungicida, but for the fumigation just once in 1 year. And then for the preparation of digitization, we have a regulation that's government regulation number 2021 about digitization. So that's still new regulation, but we have the policy, national policy of digitization for planning and then for the implementation team, preparing of archives and then metadata. And then for the planning, we have the identification of what's digital files that should be, what standard that we appropriate, and in paper, in audio, in film, and also in photograph. And also how the process of digitization, because Indonesia have government agencies and also for the governance, so we standardize the digitization should be access to public, and in this policy we have also for the records maintenance and guidelines, and also for the identification of archives before digitizing, also includes for the format of maps, paper books, also negative photograph that we check, and also for the film, we check the condition, so that's ready. So it's Jim in the workshop tell us about the accelerate of digitization, and this step recommend to skip. I agree for to accelerate, but depends of our equipment, depends of our scanner. We must do it for the checking, because if not, the dust, maybe the dirty, and also for the fungus will fall in the scanner. So that's our challenge. But maybe if the equipment like this in that demo in the convention center in Mahat, maybe it can do it, because it's very good for the bed film. And also for the equipment, so we must check what's the archives that will scan, and what's equipment that suitable for the scan, because we have very much of negative photo, so we bought very much of negative scanner of photo, and also for the film we just have one, and now we don't have because it's broke. And also for the video, we do it with the other parties to as a service, so it's as a cooperation, and as a service for the video transfer to digital. And also for the storage, because we just have digital storage since of 2017. So since that time we do high quality for the digital format. Before of that, we just have MP4 and also for the low in DVD format. So that's maybe a mistake, or maybe we can re-digitization. And also for that's our problem also, that some part of archives we don't have complete metadata. So don't have a title, don't have a description, don't have from creating agency. They just give, this is my archives, I give to National Archive, but don't have. So we have a big team in that they have the task in description for making cataloging, and the output is the list of archives. We call finding aids. And this is the finding aids that we prepare. This is the sample in photo collection, photo nikis, and we make in application we call a depot, or we call electronic depot, and the archives stored in that application also for the digital format. And this is the infrastructure, the server storage, the staff room, and the management, and also for the checking for digital collection. I think it's enough. That's all.
Next presenter, Madeline LYON, is present the video. But in the meantime, they are bio. Madeline LYON was a student at the University of Amsterdam. You want to presentation. She interned at the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific headquarters in Bangkok, where she was faced with the task of recovering and reactivating the photograph and audiovisual collection. She will continue the project as part of the Education and Knowledge Management section at United Nations SCAP. Her academic and professional area of focus is the evaluation of bottom-up perspectives of historical events and highlighting the power of visual representation of everyday elements. She previously studied the role of regional knowledge, audiovisual archives, and identification process. Take the video now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madelon de Boer. I used to be a multimedia librarian at UN SCAP, and today I'll be talking about reactivating the United Nations SCAP Audiovisual Archive. So I do have to tell you that the repository almost at UN SCAP was quite neglected, which is why I'm talking about reactivating here. So the index here is first talk about the goals of this presentation, then I'm gonna explain UN SCAP, the goals, the institutional history of the images itself, and then I'm gonna introduce myself and my position within this project. Then I'm going to talk about the findings and the preservation issues that we encountered when uncovering the archive. So photographs, AV, and digital assets. Then I'm going to talk about the content of the images and their value for SCAP itself, but also for researchers and for communities like you might be interested in, both still images here and moving image. And I'm not going to talk about the future of this collection, this SCAP collection, and how you might, how you can access it if you are interested in the value here. So the goals of this presentation is actually twofold. So the first is to illustrate the issues and the technicalities that we encountered when we were recovering the damaged and dispersed items in the archive, in the collection that we found there. So I'm going to talk about what the issues were here. And then the second goal here is to illustrate the value of the items for research into communities in SCAP member states. So what is actually SCAP? So SCAP is the UN, is a UN headquarters in Asia, in Bangkok actually, and it is the social, economic and social commission for Asia and the Pacific. So what it does, it facilitates cooperation between the 53 member states and 9 associate member states. So it is really like a platform for cooperation between those member states. What it does do, it kind of develops these sustainability goals that you can see on the slide here. So the goals are mainly enhancing transport, social development, energy investments, but it is really like a platform. So that is something that I have to make clear here. So the next thing is UNSCAP and these images that we're going to talk about. What is the institutional history there? So I do have to be very honest that there is no real documentation here on how this has evolved. So what you're going to see here is my observations and from my research oral history, almost, I would say, within the organization, and from what I've noticed in the contents of of the archive. So let's see. So in 1947, eCafe was founded. It was the former name of SCAP. And from then until mid-70s, SCAP worked as the platform, like I described already, but then it was also a dissemination node, almost in this dissemination network for the UN information services in New York. So they created the photos, the UN reports, press releases, public information products mainly, and then they sent it over to Bangkok, and Bangkok SCAP, then disseminated it over its member states. And I'm saying the mid-70s because in the mid-70s we can start to see content that was highly likely produced by SCAP itself, because it does not particularly look like something that is meant for distribution, and it is in the similar form of the distribution from New York. So they highly likely just hired some contractors to they contracted, some photographers to make photos of the region and the work that they were doing there. And then it was still working also as a distribution platform, but in both ways, let's say. And then in the 90s, SCAP also started to produce and disseminate their own video and materials, like with photos in the 70s. So in the 90s is also when we can kind of pinpoint when the neglect from the archive started, because actually, I cannot really talk about an archive in the first place because it mainly is like a repository that was used in the everyday workflows of these content creation and dissemination. But when in the 90s and 2000s, then this focus kind of developed into production instead of dissemination, then this repository of former physical photographs and AV carriers was not that integrated anymore, because it was more about producing more content and putting it out there. And then also with these electronic and digital media that started coming up, the physical collection also was kind of like left aside. So institutionally, there was not much interest there, and then they kind of like stored the contents, the physical contents, in storage spaces to leave it there and come back to it later, I guess. And just time went on, and the digital turn became like the main form of media storage and distribution, I guess. So in the 2020 actually is when there is a turning point within UNSCAP, when SCAS, which was the communications team, merged with the library, and the library kind of said, hey, this is actually a really interesting material. Why don't we like look into it and see if if it has any historical value or institutional value. So that is where in 2022 there was this opening for an internship to look into this collection from what ASCAP has gathered over all these years. So that is where I came in. Back last year, I was a preservation and presentation of the moving image student at the University of Amsterdam. Before my internship, my focus was mainly on historiography in or through audiovisual archives, which really connected quite well because these images, part of the goal of the internship was assessing the photographs and the AV collection and seeing what the value is for specific stakeholders here. And then seeing how can we return this value into the everyday workflows of ASCAP, and how can we preserve these images also and to make them accessible. So when we started looking into this, we encountered many photographs, physical photographs, 32 boxes, I believe. And it was pretty well kept. It was just, there was no proper documentation. And back in the day, I didn't even know what the content was. So I just started looking into cataloging all the folders, not every photo at least, but so all the folders, and then describing them, assigning them all the metadata. So that's what we did with the photos. There was no real damage. It was mainly just paper clips, rubber bands, pretty good state. It wasn't not too much damage. So like I told you already, so the preservation attempt was cataloging and describing everything, create collections, because with collections you can easily decide what to do with which kinds of material, like of course, and then create a working retrieval catalog, because before this, if someone wanted one specific photo, you had to go through every 32 of them, and now it's done in a matter of minutes, so that is very valuable. And then we researched in-house digitization opportunities, and luckily enough, the scanner that was present already in the library did qualify, and now there is digitization workflows here with manuals for future interns. So the AV collection, however, was a different story, because these had been stored in different storage locations. So like you can see on the left, this was one of them, and it was flooded. And like in Bangkok, rain is a very big part of life. And then it flooded, and when we opened up this, when we opened up the room, we could just feel this whiff of we could just smell that it was not good. And on here on the right, actually, you can see what one of the storage spaces looked like. It was very many singular items that we kind of took out of there. Then there was a second storage space in the middle, actually. What you can see, it is a lot of exhibition material that is very disorganized. And what you can see on the floor, there's just VHS tapes lying around, pneumatic tapes. We didn't even know how much was supposed to be in there. We just knew that it was somewhere in the pile. So we just had a big task of clearing this all out, and then gathering all the AV material. But when we opened it up, it was very molded. Like you can see on the photo, we got some testing done on the whole storage space because it smelled very dangerous. So the results came back, and it was 7 different types of mold, actually, it was very nice to have this testing done because we could confirm that the mold present was not dangerous to humans. It did cause allergic reactions in large quantities such as these. So we did at one point get the AOK actually to go ahead and catalog the materials, but we had to use these, actually, let me move ahead here. We had to wear full PPE, protective equipment, and we were working, like you can see, in the parking lot because there was so little people there, and in such a way that there was no risk to them, but we had to wear all these protective gear. What we did, it was we started cataloging all the individual items. We started labeling them and photographing, taking photos of them, of each individual item, and then also like divide them into collections. We chose this method because it was very uncomfortable actually to work in these suits, and it does get very hot without the air conditioning. So we worked 1 hour at a time, 1 hour downstairs in the parking lot, and then 1 hour upstairs, creating this catalog based on the photos. And it is actually nice to have these photos of the carriers so that we don't have to go all the way into this storage space and expose ourselves to the mold. Oh yeah, so what we did was like ensure a safe working environment, label and photograph each carrier and catalog them. So that is what we have now. And then the future, in future, we'll start conducting provenance research to assign stewardship to the, well, not necessarily assign, but to see where the responsibilities lie here and which items are definitely SCAP, under SCAP stewardship, which we can then decide on if we want to save the contents or to dispose of them. Saving them is, in terms of like cleaning them and digitizing them, is pretty difficult, and it does contaminate the material, the equipment with the mold. So we should be really careful with these decisions, and then later on dispose of every item that is from the collection, because very, very likely, even though it doesn't look like it, very likely to be contaminated. So the third issue here is the digital asset management. It is mainly because there's no dam. There's the primary platform is SharePoint, and then there's 3 different online locations, so 2 SharePoint locations and 1 drive, and there's no metadata. It is just working environments on SharePoint and on the drive, and the solution here is to also gather all of this material into 1 SharePoint location, which is called the asset library, and then here we'll organize all of this digital assets and to assign metadata. And there's no dam currently, but in the future we're like organizing it in such a way that in the future it can be transferred into a dam. So the contents of the videos, of the items, I'm sorry. So the photographs, now here you can see there's substantially more photographs than digital photographs than physical photographs, which does sound logical, because it is very easy to take more photos and just upload them to a drive. So the UN photo collection here in the middle are all duplicates that we know, because they have been sent from New York, so we could easily dispose of them. The other collections are other UN agencies mostly. So just 1 still image here. So this is the 1 photo from the UN SCAP collection, created by SCAP itself. So it is the economic, so the commission session is a yearly recurring meeting for all the member states. And what is interesting here is with these photos, of course, you don't know what is what they're talking about, what they're deciding on. And I think it is very easy to dismiss these photos as boring or static photographs, but in reality, they might make visualize very important decisions that have such a big impact, like trickle-down impact on the communities that you might be researching and talking about. So my call is here to not underestimate these images, because mainly the content of SCAP is meetings and commission sessions. In photos, it's mainly portraits and briefings and meetings and celebrations, mainly all around focused on SCAP, so not too much field work. But please don't underestimate the history that is portrayed in these photos. So here you can see the different sub-collections that we made in the physical photograph collection of SCAP. So it does not represent the full collection, but it does. I would say that the digital photo collection, the digital video collection or AV collection, and all the SCAP AV materials do very much resemble the themes that are displayed in these sub-collections here. So mainly commission sessions, like I said, many formal meetings. So like I said, with the videos, also many formal meetings, so many SCAP interviews, many interviews and meetings, sometimes recordings of the meetings, sometimes it's just snippets like to an edited video to kind of give an overview of the day or how to prepare the meeting. So it's all meeting related. I do have to say here that the disparity between the physical carriers and the digital videos is because it is very easy to upload raw videos to the Drive or the SharePoint. But I would say that from these digital videos, I would say like 20% is edited video and 80% is raw video. So don't get confused by those numbers. So the value of this video, I'm sure you can see is that it shows how this intergovernmental approach that we saw in the photo that we saw before, but you can imagine the recordings of the meetings here, is that it does SCAP here is the bridge between this intergovernmental discourse and the people itself. So here people with disabilities are represented, but also the link is made here between the decisions and reality here. So here we have one video. It is, like I told you, it is just a recording of a meeting, but this one is quite interesting because it is Ajahn Brahm. He's a very controversial Thai Buddhist. Well, not Thai Buddhist, I'm sorry, a Buddhist, and he talks about his controversies.
Many of you may know, if you've heard of me before, about 3.5 years ago, as a Buddhist monk from the Thai tradition, I instigated the ordination of bhikkhunis into the Thai Sangha. the first time that women were given full ordination the same as monks. And at that time, if you remember, my photo and articles were on the front page of the newspapers because that was highly controversial. And to this day, there are still some people who haven't forgiven me for doing that. And I was telling.
So then he goes on to describe his view on why he thinks that he is justified to make those decisions. And again, here, even if it is in a meeting setting, there is a bridge between what the people think and what is intergovernmental decision-making on a UN SCAP level, which I found really interesting here.
Many of you may know.
So shortly, the future here with the UN SCAP archive. I told you about the asset library already. Now it looks like this. It is still very much in the beginning stages, but we're still gathering all the knowledge, gathering all the metadata. We're assigning these structures. It will be very much like a predecessor for a dam. So unfortunately, we cannot give you like immediate access to all these materials, mainly also because they're not digitized, but there are these workflows now in place. If you're interested in accessing these materials, then we can go and move ahead on that. So I do want to say to you, if you do want access to this, you can request it. We will gladly help you. There are some copyright issues here, but we'll figure that out once we are in contact. There's no platform yet, but it will be a platform. I'm sorry, I don't know if there will be a platform, but there we'll be moving ahead to unify this collection and to make it usable and accessible. So yeah, please reach out if you are interested in this material. That is also the end of my presentation. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions and remarks. I do have to say that I'm currently not under contract at UN, but I will be. So please, at the moment, reach out to ckms@un.org or my personal email on the bottom. But I will still be very involved in this project. So thank you so much. If you have any questions now, please feel free to ask, and thank you for listening.